Good evening. Welcome to another yet edition of the Men'sDen. My name is Likuyani Eli, and you're right in time for a very, very special edition. But let me allow the man that has been missing in action for such a long time to come here and agitate. He's been missing in the den. Good evening, Gilbert. How are you?
Good evening, Eli. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Welcome back.
Thanks a lot. Sorry to our viewers. I had taken a long break because of unavoidable circumstances. But as they say, today is today. I'm in the house.
You're in the house, and definitely our topic of discussion tonight is infertility. Should I adopt? Let's find out what the rest of the men have to say, including the African man all the way in Utrecht in the Netherlands. Good evening, sir. How are you tonight?
Good evening, sir. Good evening. Good evening, my friend Eli. Can you hear me?
Definitely loud and clear.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much to have you on this platform again for today. Yes, I'm ready for the topic. It's a very sensitive one, and let's see how we'll go about it. And our viewers, here we are. Let's do it again.
Right there. And you know, when we talk matters, things that affect the well-being of a man, there is no better man to bring it into perspective other than the one and only James Mwathi. Good evening, sir, Mr. Psychologist. How are you tonight?
Good evening, Eli, the panelists and the audience. Good to be here as usual today. Apologies for last time. I had gone to look for Mr. Gilbert.
How convenient! How convenient of you, James. Eshuchi, Lumumba, how are you?
I'm very fine. How are you guys? I'm happy to see these faces that I've quite been missing. It's yet another time, and it's a good time to be here. At least today, now I can nicely say I can be on the opposite side of Matasyo, the African man.
Matasyo already got his pen and he's ready to write the notes as we begin the discussion tonight. Join us in the conversation as we ask you this question: and are men ready to accept assisted conception? Let's get into the facts. Infertility in men, is it an issue, Mr. Matasyo?
Yeah, it is indeed an issue, but it is not a new issue. It's quite a very old issue. And from an African perspective, there is a lot of different solutions. There's a lot of different solutions. And we have from linking to polygamy, it's linking to child adoption, it's linking to second wives. So it is a challenge that has been there, and every culture has been treating it differently. But the challenge I see now is the current situation is most people are adopting a lot of lifestyles from the modern Western world, which is unavailable in a way. So then you find that it becomes a more a problematic issue because of the old measures, of the traditional measures that put such cases in place have been cut off.
Generally speaking, Matasyo, before you get into it, allow me to bring James into the discussion and ask him, James, when we hear about conception issues, the first person to be looked at is the woman. Why is this the most reality among African society?
Thank you, Eli. Before I answer your question, I will ask myself a question. That you have asked my good friend African man. Is it a new phenomenon? And I agree with him. It's as old as mankind. It's a medical issue. And I've heard him talk about one of the many ways that it was dealt with was polygamy. And my mind has quickly run to, I don't know how many of us understand polyandry and its place in trying to solve some of these things. But we will let our good friends, the Pan-Africanists, to tell us more about that. Answering the question you've asked me, why is it the woman who immediately comes to mind? Because I think just from a very physical aspect, she's the one who carries the pregnancy. So she's the one who looks, quote unquote. So whenever you see even this term, we are pregnant, is foreign to us. That's a Western term. Yeah. As Africans, it is the woman who is pregnant. So it stems from the physical aspect. And therefore, again, I think that would be reason why we think first about the woman. But also remember the ego. We've in this show we've talked over and over about the ego of man and how fragile it is, and at the same time how huge it is. So we do not want, or society has intentionally refused to accept that man can have that problem. Probably we'll discuss further as we go along on these concepts.
And definitely, we will discuss that as we continue the conversation. But allow me to bring back the point that the African man rather mentioned. He mentioned about once there is infertility or suspicion to such, we will always go for probably a second wife or bibi mdogo that we referred in the previous conversation. Gilbert, if I bring you in and ask you, why is it that adoption is not always the first way out of such situation for the common African man?
Thank you, Eli. Today I'll side with African man and say it's a societal issue for us African men that society has put a burden onto us as men. When you're born, there's a tag on you that one of your main role as a man is to sire kids. You don't have an option. The society defines to you how you should live, how you should marry, how you should give birth, and how you should even exist within the community. So it becomes hard for a man because this is something that has been pegged on us and we don't have a way out, not unless you've been enlightened. And some have been enlightened by going to school, but school has not changed them. Because when you go back home, the pressure is from without more than within. Without is putting pressure on you because they feel they hold you. And for you, you don't want to disappoint them because this is the society that has brought you to where you are. You even negate to consult the within pressure to want to know what you want as a man. So the first thing, we run to appease the society, the pressure from without. And that's why, first thing, a man will not accept first. They cannot. They will blame the woman because canonically, it's known in the society that it's a woman who has the problem, as you said, because the woman carries the pregnancy. So a man cannot be wrong in that sector. They'll always be right. So they want to prove that I'm not the problem, it is my woman. And because there is nothing I can do, I can't chase her away. They bring the second one to prove. When the second one comes and nothing is happening, they go to the third one. When the third one comes and still nothing is happening, this is where reality don't see. And for a man, it's a shock to us because you have run away from the truth for so long that when it catches with you, there is nothing you can do. And that's where the shame now comes in, and it eats a man so much so that when they are told this thing can be rectified as James medically, they don't accept it can happen. They think it will make them look very weak by accepting they have a problem first before they are treated.
Eshuchi.
Eli, just before you bring in Eshuchi, because I know, you see the way African man is looking at us. When he starts, he will unleash for us notes, so that we don't lose something that I feel is important. Again, in reference to a question you asked my good friend Gilbert, you asked why is it not the first option that we run to as African men? And I'm now generally just taking the scope of African men. Why is it that we do not find it easy to adopt? And the answer to this might be found in if we answer the question of what is the purpose of children in African setting. Yeah. And in most African setting, you will find that it is to propagate a name, to propagate a family lineage, a family tree. Yeah?
Bloodline.
Blood. Thank you. I told you this man is wise.
It's on notes. Take it on that.
So even when we have the chance to adopt, there is always the feeling that I'm adopting, yes, but this is not my blood. So I'm giving my name to this bloodline that I have no idea where it stems from. So I think I just wanted to bring that out, that at times, even when we want to adopt, we might face challenges because we are not sure the lineage, and we feel that this is not ours. So that might be a challenge.
This is not ours could be the challenge. And I want to bring in Mwalimu Eshuchi Lumumba. But before I do that, let me just get to notice who is on the comment section. Very fast, we have, that is Nikki Nixon, Asema, lots of love there. And Kari Kuna says IVF. Queen Empress says IVF all the way. Thank you so much. Godwin Segero tuned in. Kipro Road, on the other hand, Men'sDen to Mehama, good evening and happy belated birthday wishes to you, Kipro. We have Noreen who says, long time, Makomere. Makomere, no, I told you so, brother. I told you. We have Anjonjo Sarah who says, TheArtsinHeart, Men'sDen to Mehama. Hello, gentlemen. Hello to you. And we have Susan Jagi who says, tuned in. We are streaming live on our YouTube channel, TheArtsinHeart. Kama ujahama hama, because uko kwingine utapata tu ni neighbors wa mbalimbali. Eshuchi, adoption and the issue to do with bloodline has been mentioned in this conversation. Let me paint a picture and I want you to assist me. You meet a lady and you are a gentleman. You come together, the lady has some issues conceiving. And you as a gentleman, you've had a child in a previous relationship. And this lady tells you, I cannot take in your child. I will rather accept we adopt. Would you adopt and leave your child outside there fatherless?
Okay, that I can't answer that question rationally. I will have to answer that question personally. I will not adopt. If you cannot accept my child and you want us to accept another child altogether, then in our world we call that red flags. So that is a red flag, and I'm gonna run with that way. However, just to bring my input on this, I think I love the question that James brought in, because that's quite a guiding question. What is the role of a child in the African community? You see, liberalized nations, and in Europe, for example, the role of a parent to a child is to take care of a child and nurture a child, provide for and nurture. So for them, when they see a child, they see something that has been bestowed to them for them to nurture up until it's like a bird. A bird nurtures its young ones and then lets them fly when it's time to let them fly. But you realize it's not a conversation that we have candidly and honestly, but in African nations, we tend to want to own children. So when you see a child, you're not seeing someone that you want to nurture. You see technically, for lack of a better, let me call it a property. And so that's why the pride of interesting African men, you realize a man wants to be told, hey, bana, hey, wako, hapa kabisa, things like those are the things that entice. So that when you are passing your name down, when you are saying, my grandfather gave me these and gave these to my father and my father gave these to me, you want to feel like you are actually keeping these here and there. And then in African nations, again, you realize we are big believers of inherent behaviors. You know, you've ever seen a child in a homestead and people are like, is it a who you are, partner? You know, we are very keen on inherent behavior. So we tend to believe that until the child belongs to me, then this child is going to bring external and foreign traits that perhaps don't really sit well with my community. And basically, it's an element that is very hard to break down and define. But I just still think we are still talking about conservation and liberalization because we have a community that is okay. You know, in Africa, you find people who would even say, you know what, we would rather to hivyo. Or even if we tried. A quick one just before I give the next person a chance. I can see Matasyo. Matasyo, you better be writing and listening so that you don't come here and tell me I was talking other other things. Okay, so now there's a very interesting literature book that I love. It's a book done by a Nigerian. It's called The Four Wives of Igbo something. So just a quick one. This guy apparently was important rather, and he didn't even know about it. So he married the first wife, and it's the first wife that realized I am not getting pregnant. And now in the quest to shield this person, because he was apparently, you know, a reputable person in community, the first wife decides, I am not going to raise an issue around this. So what am I going to do? I will look for another man out there and try to sire a child. Of course, we are always together, and so the child will definitely be his. And she does that, and it actually happens. And she gets baby one, baby two. And this guy now is living with the pride that I have children. Then he marries another wife because he has wealth and all that. Now the second wife comes, and the first wife actually preps the second wife and tells the second wife, listen, hapa hakuna mtoto utapata. So what you're gonna do, I'm gonna tell you what to do. Find somebody out there, get a child. So there was a conspiracy, whether positive or negative, by the wives up to the third wife to shield this person of the reality. And so this guy lived with 3 wives with a lot of children who he knew belonged to him until he married a third wife who was educated and who was not in line with these people. And now every other time they try to have to conceive, and she wasn't getting pregnant. So what did she do? She decided, you know what, let's do this. Let's try and go to the doctor. And when they went to the doctor actually tells the guy, you know what, you are unable to sire. And boom, the whole reality is in here. You've been living in a homestead of all people. So when, as we're talking about men, let's also talk about how society has refused to expose men to the reality that perhaps this is a problem and you should approach, because you realize even communities will tell you, your mother will come to you and tell you, no. It is these people that you know, we don't want to accept that this can be a problem home. Yes, I can go on and on, but I think for now we could get an alternative opinion to the same.
Definitely, I want to get an alternative opinion to this conversation. But before we do that, let's see who is here. Yes, Kiproroda Seba, what if it doesn't work? We will find out what if it doesn't work, because that's the whole reason we are having this conversation tonight. Every single Wednesday, we have the Girls Talk. And in the Girls Talk, they discuss matters girls. And in case you missed out in most of those talks, just take a look and, be part of the conversation every Wednesday. And welcome back. This is the Men'sDen. My name is Likuyani Eli. We are talking matters in fertility, and we are discussing specifically about adoption, IVF, and all others, which are solutions given to people who are having challenges having children. With me tonight in the Men'sDen, we have the whole team, and they are here in full gear. Matasyo, Kagwa, all the way in Utrecht, Netherlands, of course, Gilbert, Makomere in Oklahoma, Eshuchi, Lumumba, and James Mwathi, all the way in Nairobi, Kenya. Gentlemen, hiyo story ya adoption nataka turudi hapo kidogo, but something Eshuchi mentioned about a man that finally discovers all the children he's bearing and calling by his name are not his. It's something that has happened in our Kenyan soil. There's a man that hacked to death a woman that they thought he thought he was the father to the children until he realized no, he was impotent. And in somewhere in 2018, the legislature Millie Ojam, that is Millie, is it Millie Ojambo? If I'm not wrong.
Ojambo.
Oh, Dhiambo, yes, Ojambo, it's a different one. Yes, I wanted to be sure I'm not being misleading us. So Millie Ojambo, who happens to be one of very well-spoken Kenyan politicians, and having had this issue of infertility as a problem, brought this to the floor of the parliament. And one of the issues they were discussing is having assisted reproductive technology such as IVF issues looked into. One of the main challenges in this with this regulation that exists include the surrogacy being not so legal and legal. It's in between. And most men would shy off to ask another man to donate the sperm. But do you think they are very open to the idea of having a surrogate mother carrying their baby? African man. If you can get your mic, sir.
Can you get me clear?
Yes, I do.
Yes. Yeah, I'll go back to where we started, infertility and abortion and adoption and all that. Sorry. But I want to bring the argument back because you have to see how things are going in a chronological order to understand what is really affecting man. First of all, we start with life as fertility versus infertility. You understand?
Yeah.
When you are fertile, there is no problem. Things will go okay. When you are infertile, there are two things. To find another way to replace your bloodline or just have no bloodline. If you choose to have another way to replace, if you choose to not try to replace your bloodline in any way that are there, then your story ends there, your generation ends. But if you choose to replace your bloodline in any trusted way, then your bloodline goes on. So the whole issue is the bloodline, which links to inheritance, which is a very important thing. And to tell you, I want to disagree with you. I had people talk like there's a lot of problems in the African way of dealing with this issue. I did my research again. Africa is the cultures in Africa for protecting bloodlines are the best than any other Eastern Asian Western. In fact, Western, sorry to be honest, it is a very selfish bloodline situation. If you study it very good, it's it's just their culture. Integrating different bloodlines in the Western world is much more restricted. Look at the Jewish one way, then look at the Germans one way. Go on and on. So we are number one bloodline protectors. That's the kind of African men we should be proud of. One example is what Eshuchi says, I agree with it. And it becomes a book because it is a unique story. You understand? That is why it is a book. And that's why a man who became stubborn to understand, who refused to accept. So that's why it is a popular story. Because if it's one story which is popular, it means there's only one impotent man at that time. Data tells you it is not possible. Mathematically, whichever way you look at it. So now, what has happened? What has happened is this. As again I said, there are so many things put in mechanism that have been there laid in a lot of African cultures. For example, brothers' help is a very common culture where in the community, a man reaches to a point where a certain a man of choice and even discuss with the women. There are a lot of families with their own family protections. And the only thing is, what is missing now is we have forgotten that man belongs. Where I came from, in our village, maybe you can, we have people called Bakochi. Those are the guys you are circumcised with. Those are the guys you're the secret keepers. Those guys, even before you become the important place, you will have already sat down. Elders will have sat with you. even if marriage has happened, there'll be a lot of solutions in the place to do. So the reality that these mechanisms are there to relieve men of their pressure. For example, if you just leave one time, just go talk to your uncle Ashley, you tell him, listen, I've tried 2, 3, 4, 5 girlfriends. What do you think? Say, don't worry. 1 week, people will sit down, because first of all, this is a medical problem. In some cases, which can be healed, and in some cases not. You understand? There is also partner incompatibility. There are stories where two partners cannot get a child with each other, but both partners can get a child with other partners. You understand? That's also a sort of infertility. I don't know how you can say medically. Maybe you can help me there. So when I look at it, I look at, okay, what's the problem? The problem is infertility. What does it affect? Bloodline. And what are the fears of bloodline? Inheritance, acceptance, continuation, and legacy. So what we have to be working on now is, what should the modern man be educated about? The shame, the fear, the community comes from the protection of bloodline. So it's very easy to, there are also other people who choose not to have children and even prefer to donate sperms. It is also psychologically for them. They do not want to continue with the bloodline. So, but if you search nicely, in every African community, there are mechanisms put in place in protecting bloodline. Adoption, different ways of adoption are part of it. Surrogate mothership is also part of it. There are so many, more than 1,000. So the solutions are there. Everything is there. It's only the modern man to tap in.
Before we go to modern man tapping into the solution, Eshuchi, yes. Eshuchi, go ahead.
Okay.
I love that Matasyo says there are ways, or that there are lots of ways to keep the bloodline and to protect it. My only problem with that is I'm not able to put a finger to it, to touch an example and say a situation and say, okay, Apa, this was impossible, and then this was done.
No, let me give you
an example. Let me give a practical example, just to finish. In our village, it is known a lot of places where you see in a family, they tell you this actual child is from their cousin.
But that's where the problem starts.
Yes. Now,
let me come in.
No, because that is the mechanism put in place. But for the outside world, you must be very close in the family, because all these things are never open source information.
Sexuality, has it been accepted, Matasyo? Is it accepted?
Yes.
I know where you two are struggling.
I'm not asking if it exists. I'm asking if it's accepted.
Yeah.
Like, are men accepting it?
Yeah. Very good.
No, you see, no. Let me. I think I know where the disconnect is.
You tell us.
And there is an echo somewhere. Now, number one, Matasyo, we agree. I think you've gotten us wrong. We agree, in the African setting, there was mechanisms that dealt with that. I think what the example that Eshuchi gives is one of the examples in the African setting. Now, the problem was, like you're saying, it's not an open book. It's not something that man will proudly acclaim. Yeah. And number two, also, we have moved away from the African setting. That I find that to be the biggest challenge that we face today. While previously there were those mechanisms, remember, a big percentage nowadays do not live in the village. In the village, you'll find the smaller percentage. So we've the Western culture has influenced the kind of things that we do. And because of that, you will find that even that age group or age set that you got circumcised with, and that was the secret keepers, while it worked previously, today they will get circumcised and everybody will go their way. And after a while, life is so complicated, nobody has time for the other. Yeah. So while it worked previously, vitu kwa ground, I think I always agree with the Eshuchi when he says vitu kwa ground is completely different. You will not find that. Unmute.
Let me cut you short. Don't underestimate other people's culture. Right now, in our Luo culture,
See that?
I want to put things in perspective.
But I have agreed with culture. I have agreed with culture.
No, you are saying those things, they work those days, but they're not working now. I want to tell you they are working now. Let me give an example how they're working.
To what percentage? To what percentage of the population?
100%.
Oh, lo. Okay.
Let me tell you my story. Just clear. Go do your research now. Go ask who buries an Isuha man.
No, that's different. That's completely different.
No. Let me explain to you very well. So whenever I'm like, okay, this person has died here, and the announcement, the time of burial has come, they always announce who are the Makochi here to bury him, even up to today. And people stand
That is okay, and that is different.
Well, what's the difference?
Matters childbearing and
Eshuchi and Gilbert, before we become spectators, please have your moment of fame.
Okay. Today I'm agreeing with Matasyo, so I'm not in any altercation.
Matasyo, let me just shed some light to you guys. I think maybe sometimes when we have these conversations, we have not understood individualism. Matasyo is an optimist. Yeah, Matasyo is this person who chooses to see the good thing. He chooses to see the possibilities where we see impossibilities. He chooses to straighten up places that we see curves, and we don't deny that. And I think it's also what we actually, Matasyo, the solutions that you give and the realities that you shade are what we aim for. The unfortunate part is that
this guy has been away for too long. This guy has been away for too long. That's the problem. He thinks Africa, we are in 1970 when he left. That's the problem.
You see. Let me give you a very clear.
Ellie, I would want as Matasyo say, this is not an open book source of information that most of us are privy to. I'm very sure the last time Eshuchi witnessed burial rites at home for him, to the latter. I used to argue this way until I was home, and there's something I had learned in class, and I went to witness, and I was very keen. I was an observer, and I did my work very well. These things we are disputing, they are happening in our society. Seriously? Behind our eyes.
And we don't
it will not, even your brother, something, your mother and your father can do something with your brother. And he's your brother and you don't know what happened. It's 15 years. Oh, so this happened. So I'm like a stranger in this family. These things happen. You see, the society's sake to protect this ego of a man. They cultivate your ego in a way that you don't come out with shame. Even your own immediate people might not know what is happening because the society protects the man. So I agree with Matasyo what he said. These things are happening in our own eyes. I want to tell Eshuchi and James during this December holiday to go home and be very observant. They should not just stick in Nairobi and think they have a monopoly of knowing what's happening in the village.
You're the guys in the diaspora who keep telling us what is happening in our backyard. But anyway. Gilbert, you make a point, and you make a valid point, and I want to agree with you. And perhaps I feel like we're really missing the the puzzle that is not really coming in. Because let's say, Gilbert, you're right. Let's say your observation is candid and 100%. Let's say all that is existent. Then we need to be talking about a problem here, because then the problem is, what does it mean when these issues are taken care of behind the curtains, behind the cameras, and then later on, because the problem with these kind of solutions, they always burst out in the end, and then in the end, we have situations where, a child realized he didn't belong here, a man realized he was not the father here. I think we're trying to get to a point where we can tackle these issues from a point of knowledge and think as men and think within the realities of, if I knew today that I'm impotent and I'm unable to sire a child, and it's knowledge that cannot be associated with stigma, can we get the conversation to a place where this is not an issue that then deters me from getting solutions, from getting adoption, if that is the option, from speaking about it? Because then, if we are dealing with these issues behind the curtains, if my mother and father can conspire to do something with my brother to protect my ego, then we are dealing with a bigger problem. We're definitely dealing with a bigger problem.
Let me say, I think
Gilbert.
Eshuchi, with all due
Yeah.
respect, with all due
Yeah.
respect, I think if the way I understood it, it means that your own brother can be infertile, and the family can conspire and they help him with his own knowledge. You understand? With his own knowledge that you, even as a brother, you may not know what is happening. You understand?
Let me come in again. I want to agree with Eshuchi, because we might be taking a different tangent without our knowledge. The question on the table is, why are we having difficulties with men accepting that there is an issue? Yeah.
Mhm.
You see, all these mechanisms might actually be there on the ground, but has the man taken them in? Has the man accepted them? Yeah. Because what we are finding is, when, like we started the conversation and Eli was asking, why is it that we think it is the woman's problem? Why is it that we are not accepting it and we are placing the burden on the women? Yeah. Why is it that we will engage in negative coping mechanisms? So once I know that I am impotent, I will either go out and drink, I will become violent to the woman, I will become karibu niseme jina ingine ya Kiswahili si mzuri, but a man who rukarukas everywhere, yeah, trying to appease my ego. Yeah, that is the question on the table. So the mechanisms might actually be there. That is number one. Number two, even when the mechanisms are there, I wonder, and I look at it realistically, in the 21st century where we are in, I don't know how many times I will go to the village, so that, because in the urban centers, I do not think we will find these mechanisms. Remember, I started by saying, in the African setting, these mechanisms were there, and they protected. Just follow my train of thought. No, just follow my thought. No, don't. I am using my tense intentionally. Just give me time and then you will rebuttal. In the African setting, the mechanisms were there. Yeah. They might actually still be there currently, but are they there in the environments that we are in? And that's why I was asking my good friend African man, what percentage of us are in the village? You bring the issue of the barrier rights, and I agree completely with you guys, yeah, and they might be deep, but I want you to consider the shame, personal shame, that is associated between barrier and impotence. Barrier, it's an open thing. This guy has gone. The community has to. It is not an option. The community has to become engaged. When it is impotence, it is very few people. If it is not the man and the wife, it is only maybe one more person or two people who are invited into this conversation. So it's not something that we can say, Nisawa, let's do rights, African traditional, to dance huku, tuende kwa cousin. It will not happen, my friends.
Let me come
Eli, I would like to come in. Matasyo.
Let's allow Gilbert.
Before we forget, I would like to come in and just tell the two gentlemen that I agree with them totally. It's only that we were talking on the other perspective of this matter. We need to discuss where we are coming from and where we are going to. And I would say it was there, it is still there. If it's not happening in your eyes, don't assume it's not happening simply because you don't know. It just might be ignorance. So in a good way. I didn't say in a bad way.
It's okay, Gilbert. You've said something, and this is something Eshuchi has raised as a point of concern. Why is it that if it's okay, why is it happening behind closed doors or behind, it's not open? Why is it
Ellie, you are the one who has a problem with behind door. The fact that you have a problem with behind door doesn't mean it's a problem to everyone. Only your problem should not be everyone's problem. That's how we tend to generalize the issues eating our society. We think because people in Nairobi lack water, people in America should be seeing Kenya as a country that doesn't have water. No, it's just a problem.
No, I think.
And I'm saying these things happen and they are in our society, they are happening. They are defined by each society. What is happening in Central might not be the same thing that is happening in Western, might not be the same thing happening in Turkana. That's how we appreciate diversity of our culture. Because what happens in Western might sound very strange to James in Central. What happens in Central might sound very strange to someone in Nyanza. That's where the diversity comes in. But now we are at a modern stage where civilization does not define where you are. What happens in Europe will mirror what happens in Nairobi. And that's where we are discussing. Because now we have this modern man who has moved from our society now and is on the modern stage. That is now where the acceptance becomes a problem, because we talk of society and we forget this modern man does not even know his or her own culture, does not even subscribe to what is happening. Those days I would marry across my village. Nowadays, I move from Western and go marry in Mombasa, where someone doesn't even know what happens in my culture. And when someone is accepting me, you can't force them to come and accept everything that is happening in my home, because they're also coming from a place.
Mr. Gilbert, I get where you're coming from, but I feel I'm siphoning a lot of contradictions and maybe non-seek from what you're saying, because when you make you cannot tell us that if something is happening in this culture and it's not happening in this culture, then we have here, as we are seated on this panel, for example, we have the universal blanket, and at least that is we are all men. Before anything else comes, we are all men. Before I start talking about Matasyo's age, my age can now start forming compartments of ourselves. Occupations can form compartments. Locational affiliations can form compartments. Cultures and tribes can form compartments. But we have the bigger primary blanket group. And the issue at hand today, if you ask me, is not really an issue that has to be tackled from a cultural point of view. I think it's a conventional issue. We are speaking importance adopted, and we are speaking the interpretation of these people. If you tell us that because we have mechanisms that cater for these, and they work for a few people here and there, and a few people here and there, and that we are unaware, therefore that makes us ignorant, then already you are telling us that we need to be researching for solutions. And if we need to be researching for the solutions, then they're not obviously available. So that is why we are here and trying to understand how can we arrive at solutions that are at least amicable, available, and acceptable.
Amicable, available, and acceptable. Eshuchi, I've listened too much, and I think I'm now losing course of everything. But because in the interest of time, I want us to really tackle this as we move forward. Is IVF an option? And let me throw it at who would be best suited. Let me throw it back to Eshuchi, because he's been on the bench for quite some time. Eshuchi, IVF, the cost of IVF, it's about 3,000 euros. That's translating to about 320,000 Kenyan shillings, roughly. And if you go for IVF, there's an option of having surrogacy, which will go in between 90,000 Kenyan shillings, and then you have the contract, and you have to pay for the upkeep and well-being of this person that is doing the surrogacy. Would you go through all that trouble if you were to go and discuss and do a local arrangement?
There's a popular interview where Larry Madowo of Kenya was interviewing a Ghanaian MP, and the Ghanaian MP had formed a bill in Parliament to deal with to make LGBTQs gayism and all that to be illegal in Ghana. And initially I thought, maybe this guy is being a bit controversial, but he had quite legitimate points, and he quite really beat Larry at the interview because Larry was not being objective with it. What is my point? My point is, at some point, Larry asked this guy, what would you do if your own daughter or your own son came to you and told you they are gay? What would you do? And the guy's response was, well, thank God, I have 2 sons and 1 daughter, and none of them are gay. And so Larry repeated the question. So what would you have done? It's a tricky question to ask me what I would have done, because first of all, I have a son, I'm fired. So, and
at least you think you've fired.
Yes.
No.
It's okay. Give him time.
No. I
he's saying he's a member. Okay. I thought he's protecting his interest.
Okay, so this is the point. I think that question is a very personal question, to be very honest. So if you ask what I would do, I can't answer you because right now I can't think rationally because I know I can sire a baby. Honestly, I know I can sire a baby. But I'm thinking about someone who cannot or who might not be in a position to. I think it becomes more a question of what do you need a child for? What is your level of understanding as a couple? Let me just allow me a minute to also make a quick point, a really quick point. Western culture and modernization approaches family from a nuclear perspective. It is me and my wife. We isolate the world and we make our decisions centrally around us. That's why in the Western cultures, when your mother grows too old, they become burdens, you send them to elderly homes. In Africa, we are communal in the setups. Our setups are very communal. I take care of my brother, I take care of my aunties. When my mom is too old and she's unable to do anything, she moves in my house. And therefore you realize democracy becomes bigger in the African culture. And democracy has always been the biggest problem in the modern world because democracy then dictates that all opinions are going to come on board. So you realize it's easier for 2 couples who know that this life stops with us to make a decision. And sometimes adoption is not even about infertility. We have couples who just decide, you know what? We take our careers too seriously. I really want you. I don't want you to lose the body that you are, or you're a woman. I'm a woman. I wouldn't want to go through the changes that I have to undergo. And if there's a way that we can get a child who's there and we can parent them and we can be a parent to them and all that. So all these dynamics really play in. So IVF would be a very subjective option depending on who the victims are. Let me not call them victims, who the subjects are and what really they are looking for and what it means for them to have a child. I think that would be
Early before James comes in, because I know
I am the one next.
He'll change the issue. I just want to echo this early. What's the difference between what is happening in IVF and what used to happen in our society? The difference is modernization. In our society, we are protecting blood lineage. With the modern now, we have opened the door. You have a right to choose. You go through the hospital, it is done professionally. So we tend to think it's different from what used to happen in our society. How? What will happen? The process ni nini? Process ni nini? Just explain to us.
I will tell you the process.
Yeah.
Well, allow James to tell us the process. James, the process and the difference.
Yeah.
I will tell you the process and why, the pros and cons. But before I do, nimesikia Suchi akisema ati him he will not answer because he cannot be objective because he knows he can sire. And I was told
For now.
What is the difference between him and the legislator in Ghana?
Wait. I was told the only person who knows whether you can sire or not is not you. It
I
is
was
the
about
mother.
to say that, but he defended himself.
The problem,
but
problem. No. I will cut James short. Yeah, you know, actually, if you guys know me, you know I am the modern day Thomas. I touch things. I make sure. Yeah. So don't be lied. I might have
doubt.
someone who has done DNA to confirm. Hey, bana. Hey.
Well, Eshuchi.
Before even James continue, we have even doubted the government statistics on COVID. How are you agreeing with DNS?
I was about to tell him we live in a system. We live in a system where the guilty are innocent and the innocent are guilty.
If that is the conversation to take, then we would have banned this debate and go home. Because even who can ascertain that you are important? Who can ascertain that you are important?
Anyway, back to our topic. Before Eshuchi chases us away, because we have told him there might be doubts. Now you don't want to bruise his ego. So let's get back to the topic.
Thank you.
No, but it's okay.
I think, and the question that Gilbert poses is the difference between the modern ways of getting of conception and the olden ways of protecting, because I think the ultimate aim was the same, to get the child. Yeah. But probably today, what is happening today and why we are moving away from the traditional setting is the shame. I don't know what word to use. You see, there's the.
You don't know why you're running away from your culture. You even don't know.
No, wait! Don't confuse me. It is not acceptable. I'm trying to find the right word. It would be more acceptable for me and the society around me, not the society around me, because I care about my environment, not other people's environment. So it would be more acceptable for me if I have accepted that I'm impotent to go for IVF than for me to accept my wife to sleep with somebody else.
What is the difference?
That is where we are. The difference is what my environment sees. My environment has seen. Wait. No. I'm not talking about the results. I'm talking about the process. The environment has seen. No. You can't tell me about my environment. No. African man, you can't tell me about my environment. You tell me about the African environment, but not my environment. Yeah? But in my environment, wait. In my environment, present day environment, I would be okay to adopt, to go for IVF, to go for surrogacy, than to have my wife physically sleep with another man to get the child. That is the difference. The result is the same. We all want a child, but the process is what differentiates the two.
Now I understand you.
Eli, you see, James is talking in a situation where someone asked in the comments, what if haiwezi fanya kazi? James is talking in a situation inaweza fanya kazi but haina result. What if in a situation?
No. Don't assume. Don't put words into me that I assume.
I said no, James.
You are shooting blanks. You are shooting blanks.
I'm alluding.
Okay. You know the word.
Did you say Makomere is shooting blanks? Or
No. Why are you people putting words in my mouth?
You just said that. Really. This situation, you see, the situation I'm alluding to is where not that you can do it and no result. The situation is you can't do it and there's no result. Just the other day, I will not want to use that example. You remember the guy who the story was, that's the story that came out. They differed with the wife because the guy had everything. The problem is that he was not able to make this woman fulfill. And
He was shooting blank.
He's evading. I know what he's trying to say. I think it's to avoid the libel and defamation.
The story that came out when the altercation happened and the guy shot the woman was they had separated, and the reason was the guy was not able to make this woman get a kid, yet the woman had the desire to have one. And
are you talking about the guy that is supposed to be a legislator?
No, leave alone that. In Kenya, this was a story in Kenya.
You need to understand one thing. You need to understand.
Let's get back to the topic.
This is a side. This is a side.
Why is it that these guys don't understand?
You need to understand. I'm not objecting or doing anything. Just listening. Just sorry. Ellie, you need to understand that Gilbert and James are life coaches. They tend to want to use the correct words. Hawapendi kukasirisha
sasa umeniweka kwa hiyo group.
So it's okay.
I'm trying to say the story was
okay, some order, please, gentlemen. Okay, Gilbert, go ahead.
The story was the woman had separated from her matrimonial home because the man would not have made her get the kid. It was her desire. And when the woman came to check on this guy because he had gotten an accident, the story, that's what they say, I cannot ascertain.
Verify.
The guy realized this woman was pregnant. And what did he do? He could not believe. He shot the wife and shot himself. So the shame does not run away. As far as we will want to say, oh, I'm good with it, the reality is, Ellie, it cannot happen. Someone will help you, whether in old days or in modern days. So as James said, the way you choose to carry the shame, it's personal. It cannot be made a communal thing.
Okay, let's have a round from everyone. Let's start with the
I know Matasyo is going to finish. Okay, now you squander my minute to make that last minute, but it's okay. I know this is my last chance. So I'm just gonna echo quickly what James.
Matasyo, eating into Eshuchi's time. Give time, please. Allow him, please.
Eshuchi, you are not fair in allocating time.
James has a point. James has a huge point. We have the end and we have the means. And the biggest situation here, the biggest conflict here, if you people don't understand, or if you people have not gotten the hang of it, the biggest issue in a man's acquiring or maybe getting a child is actually the means, not the end. The end is gonna be a kid. And I know we want to say at the end of the day, you got your kid. That's why when a man is impotent, we take a sperm from another man and then we inject it into the woman who belongs to the man. When the woman is the problem, or maybe when the woman's really that, because we have situations where the man is okay and the woman is okay, but the woman just can't be able to carry the pregnancy to term. Then you take the man's sperm, you take the woman's egg, and then you fertilize them into another woman's womb, and all these are acceptable. The underlying thing here is we are avoiding a situation where a man is going to sleep with another woman who is not the wife, or a woman is going, because the moment that happens, it does not matter how rational we want to be with life. It does not matter how understanding we want to be as people. It does not matter how civilized we are and liberal we are. There is almost no chance that I'm going to be okay with the fact that my wife went to sleep with another man to get me a baby to come and raise. Tricky.
Very tricky. I come in directly. Very tricky. The only thing you're forgetting is you are traumatic with one fear that the means will involve another man sleeping with another woman. If we can have a very simple science, hospitals in Africa, where you can say this is the man, they can give him newspapers, he does this thing, he comes, they put in a test tube, you go home, you do it yourself with a syringe. What is the problem? Why are you accepting big compasses, a lot of money, when you can do it just in a clinic there in Huisero? Just to sound like you're Western. Forget it. It's the same
Okay,
thing.
I have absolutely no idea. No. I'm
African
not
man.
even my clumsy.
Yeah.
James, come in. The first time I
my
wanted to
closing
say
remarks.
something.
My
James, go
closing
ahead.
remarks starts with I have absolutely no idea what African man is saying. Absolutely. Now to close.
I know. By the way, I pray for you.
I told you even such a word. I told
It's
you.
like he's from. It's like he's from nowhere, and then he's just trying to tell us about Huisero and test tube
Anyway,
and newspapers.
back
Matasyo has a very
back to
valid
where we
point.
started.
A very valid point.
Back, listen, guys.
Very,
These guys are
Order,
even into my
order,
business.
gentlemen, we need to close the conversation. James, please.
Back to where we started. You have to stop laughing. Back to where we started. The big question I think on the floor is why is it difficult for man to accept, number one, that they are impotent, and number two, if they so desire, and it's an agreement between the two, the wife and the man and the woman, if they so desire, why again is it difficult to go to the next step and either adopt or IVF or all those? And very briefly, my closing comment will be, number one, the man's ego. Where I started, we might debate here and laugh and talk about modern and versus traditional, but whether traditional or modern, the man has an inflated ego. Now, the problem is with all this inflated ego, it's a very fragile ego because it is presumed that a man by nature should be able to perform certain tasks. So when he is not able to perform, the first thing is the shame and the fear of how does society view me? Yeah. So as long as those two are there, we can assuage the shame. We can take the man through acceptance, yeah, all the way from denial to acceptance, where now he's okay to either adopt or go whatever. But every man, it does not matter whether it's African setting or modern setting, will go through the same process. There'll be denial, there'll be shame, there'll be fear of what society sees him as. There'll be that feeling of failure. Remember, by just the roles, man should be the protector, should be the provider, should be the creator. So you are taking, or he feels like a role has been yanked out of him. So we can debate here all we want, but there are certain things that will apply in all both settings, and unfortunately they are there and they are not pleasant. So it's not as easy as, oh, I'm important, let me adopt. It's not that easy.
Gilbert.
I just love it that the two men have agreed with us. It's about ego and how you
Who are the two
handle it.
men you're speaking about? Matasyo and James.
Matasyo and Gilbert, those are the two men who have agreed with us that it's about the ego that the society has made men believe that you're supposed to look in a certain way or appear as this person who does this function in our society. So we end up having that trust in us that this is what you're supposed to do because the society has said. And just to sum up is to let my viewers know that you might not be able to be seeing me regularly on the show because of unavoidable circumstances. And if you don't get that chance to see me, don't doubt, because I'll always pop in when I get time. Change of schedule and time is affecting me a little bit. So if you don't see me, bear with me, not because I want to run away. It's only that sometimes it will be so hard for me to make it to the show, but we'll be together. I'll always pop in whenever I get time. Thank you.
Definitely. Makomere with his final word in the Men'sDen tonight. We didn't get any conclusion to the matters, but let's put it to vote. IVF adoption. Let's start with Eshuchi. Eshuchi, IVF or adoption?
No, I told you. I told you.
Let's put it to vote, gentlemen. IVF or adoption?
Eshuchi, yes or no? Answer.
No, there are two options. It's not a yes or no answer. It's IVF or adoption.
Mwalimu, you're setting your own questions.
No, that is not a yes or no question.
IVF
That is very specific.
adoption?
Yeah.
It's an either or an or. I need more options. Let's think of more options. Make that list a little
Don't set your own question.
Well, Matasyo, will you go for IVF or adoption?
In this modern society, I'll advise someone to go for IVF.
IVF.
I don't need it. I'm okay.
Great that you've answered that. What if the donor of the sperm or the semen is known or unknown? Which one will you go for?
For me personally, if I would be in a situation like that, I would tell my girl, we go on holiday, we take newspapers, we look for what kind of seed can we look for.
Non-donor or unknown donor, sir? That is the question.
It doesn't matter for me. It doesn't really matter.
Okay.
It doesn't really matter.
James?
That I can answer. No, unknown.
Okay.
That one I can answer.
Okay,
Unknown. I know you'll answer unknown.
If it's unknown, I just need to know the overview of what he looks like or what she looks like. Let me just have
but for tonight we're using if it was to be a donor, and the problem we've identified is the man. His either his sperm has an issue, is not able to fertilize and bring that pregnancy to life. Would you go for a donor? And if you go for a donor, known or unknown?
I've answered unknown, but with those pictures
Those are subjects to conversation. James?
You can go to unknown and then you find that guy alikuja na Stella kutoka huko Japan. He's unknown, yes, but now
James, we need to end this conversation, Eshuchi. James?
No, me, I will, I will side with Eshuchi. That is a very subjective question. I don't know. I can't make up my mind. I can't make up my mind whether IVF or adoption. On the spur of the moment, I might not be able to make that decision. So
Okay,
I will
fine.
not. I choose to abstain from answering that question.
Gilbert,
I will adopt.
you would rather adopt.
Why?
That's my choice.
Well, that remains choice. And as you can see, gentlemen, that answers the question that we had tonight, which is the general way a man will look at family line. It's really personal. It's about their continuity of bloodline. And as facts remain, be it is adoption, IVF, or otherwise, it's still a tricky subject to discuss. Continue with the
you're
conversation.
also part of the family. So
Yeah.
what are you going for? we need votes that why are you now becoming a host?
I have
when we need your vote.
I have had to make some serious decisions in my life before and now. And I think adoption, I'm very subjective and not objective. That's all I can say.
So you've been bothering us all this while. These are subjective things. Then you
Again, gentlemen, I say when it comes to adoption, I'm very subjective and not objective. Let's meet again next week in the Men'sDen, because the men tonight have decided not to answer any of our questions. Have a great night and have a lovely night. Take care. See you on Tuesday next week.
Ulitizama kitanda changu kimejaa kunguni, godoro inchi mbili ukasema wanipenda. Simu yangu masekete, nguo zangu matambara, viatu vilivyochapishwa viraka, ukasema wanipenda kutoka ndani ya roho. Tulipoenda bafuni nawe, sabuni ya kipande, uzini wa gunia, ukasema ujali, fanaka uchoka kwa Mola. Sasa iweje leo hii nasikia fununu toka kwa rafiki zako kuwa wanipa talaka? Sasa iweje leo hii hadithi za kuaminika zaniambia mapenzi haya yamekuchosha? Sasa iweje leo hii naambiwa wasema umasikini wangu wewe umekuchosha? Ninachoomba baby, nipende nilivyo. Baby, nipende nilivyo. Zawadi ya fanaka hiyo kutoka kwa Mola, mafanikio kutoka kwa Mola. Baby, baby, ninachoomba mimi